Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. And I did say a little earlier on that this is our final interview. It is not. We are going to be talking with Dr. Iqbal Survey of Sekunjalo round about 10:15 this morning. So I do hope you're going to stay with us for that final interview. Nonetheless, we are going to be talking about something pretty serious this morning. It is the commemoration of World Mental Health Day. It is happening today. It's aimed at creating public awareness to make issues related to mental health a global priority. Efforts are also aimed at attracting investment support to improve treatment of mental health condition. To talk to us about this very important and serious health issue is none other than Fatima Seedat. She is the development manager at SADAG. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam. Jazakallah for having us on air.
Lovely to have you here. And this is an important issue. I've been talking about mental health issues on other platforms for years on end. I seem to think that we are now just beginning, the general public are now just beginning to accept that mental health issues or mental health is a disease like any other disease and should be treated as such. In the past, there was a lot of stigma, there probably still is, and people were almost embarrassed to suggest that they have a mental health issue or a family member has a mental health issue. Are you finding any changes in this space?
Most definitely. When I started working at SADAG, we used to get very few people calling in asking for help and reaching out. Before COVID, we were getting about 600 calls. Post-COVID, currently we're getting about 3,000 or more people reaching out on a daily basis asking for help. So we are seeing a huge difference, but I think it's also about the more we have conversations and the more we commemorate days like this, we are able to break the stigma. We are able to encourage people to speak more about mental health, which is important just to make sure people are more aware that mental illness is real and it is completely treatable, and it's just like a normal chronic illness that you go through.
And it is so sad because if you're in a company or group of people, or if you're amongst family and you hear someone in the family has perhaps cancer, that person gets so much of empathy and so much of support. And at the same time, if somebody else points out that another person in that same group has a mental health issue, you almost shirk and shy away from the person, thinking that it might be contagious. And this is one condition. Mental health is not contagious.
I think a lot of listeners need to realize that 1 in 3 people may have a mental illness during their lifetime. So 1 in 3, if you're having a conversation between 5 friends, one of you are definitely going to go through something at some point in your life. WHO also released stats, and they said 1 in 8 people around the world are living with a mental illness and are being treated for it. So it's huge amounts of people. I mean, 10 people in a like 1 in 8 people, that's a lot of people.
Sure.
So I think we just need to be more, like we always say, be kind. And when
Absolutely.
one is going through something that's difficult, we all go through difficulties on a daily basis. It's
Sure.
just a difference between how you cope in. I may cope better with a few things, and you may cope better with a few things. We're all not the same. We're all unique. So
Absolutely.
we just need to be kinder to each other. That's all.
So, Fatima, I presume you come from a psychological background, and that is why you are obviously development manager at SADC. I want to talk a little bit about developments that has been made over the past so many years as to the approach with mental illness. But before we get there, mental disorders comprises a very broad range of problems with different symptoms. How is a family member going to know that my loved one has a mental issue? And what would be their first, their first port of call? Because it can be very overwhelming, frightening, scary. And you kind of wonder, is my family or my loved one going to be able to overcome this? How do you respond to all of those type of questions?
So, when you're looking for signs and symptoms within a person or within yourself, the first thing you look at is your functionality levels. Whether you are able to go through your daily activities the way you used to, or are you struggling? Then you look at changes in your behavioral patterns. So you're looking at um, your your different your changes in eating, sleeping, whether you are able to do the things you used to do before, um, just taking like normal body hygiene. Are you still taking care of the way you look, the way you feel? And then, of course, it's your actual psychological aspects, which is the way you feel. Do you feel like being isolated? Do you feel sad over long periods of time? Do you see there's mood fluctuations within yourself in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and they haven't subsided that much? So when you look at all those changes, you will then realize, okay, maybe there is something going on. Your first port of entry, you can definitely phone SADAG on our helplines. We open 24 hours a day, and we can guide you through the process of where you need to get the help. Alternatively, go and visit your family doctor, GP that you always consult with, because they would be well equipped just to assist you and also to help assess you. There are brochures and information tools on SADAG's website. So if you think that you're feeling depressed at the moment, go and download our depression brochure. Or if you feel like you have high levels of anxiety, go and get a anxiety brochure. And what you go is do a check. So go through the symptom list. Take on whatever applies to you. Take that with you to your GP and then have a conversation, because often we forget what we need to discuss or the types of symptoms we're going through. But if we write it down, it makes it much more easier for us.
Now, Fatima, obviously, when we talk about mental illness, there is such a wide range of different illnesses. And as with physical illnesses or diseases, you can do bloods and temperature, etc., etc. With mental illness, there isn't, those type of, uh, you know, uh, tests available to truly pinpoint what the situation actually is. And then, of course, with the patient, him or herself, probably would be in denial and wouldn't want to go to a doctor or to SADAG for that matter, thinking, I'm okay, I'm not the one that's got the problem, you are the problem person because you're reading far too much into my behavior. So a very, very difficult situation to manage.
It is very difficult. And sometimes, yes, we do get people that are more like they take longer to accept their situation. But we always encourage people, reach out in its early days, because it's much more easier to treat in comparison to when it becomes prolonged. So for instance, like if you're going through depressive symptoms, and we always use this analogy where um it's like, like a Coke bottle where you keep bottling up feelings, and you're going through all your emotions. And the Coke bottle, you're shaking it and shaking it. Eventually, when you open that lid, what happens? Everything spills over, and it's uncontrollable at times. And we want to avoid that place where you bottle things up for so long that eventually everything just seems overwhelming for you, and you feel like you're out of touch already. So please reach out. Sometimes, even if it means just having a short conversation with a counselor or with someone you trust, do it, because you feel so much better. Talk therapy is one of the best things you could do for yourself, just to make you feel a bit better, because just being listened to will help you process your thoughts as well.
So, what is the theme for this year's World Mental Health Day? Because I know every year you have a different theme, and it allows the patient or the families to focus and possibly do work around that particular theme.
So this year's theme is prioritizing one's mental health. So it's
Wow.
general. It's to everyone. Taking care of your mental health. Know when to stop. Just to take a break for yourself. Know when to give yourself time to breathe. If you are feeling a bit overwhelmed, maybe learn some techniques to help you get through your anxiety levels, like deep breathing. So make sure that you having enough sleep. Your lifestyle choices are good, just so that you can maintain your well-being. And that's the most important thing. If you can maintain your mental well-being and prioritize it just like your physical well-being, then we are winning already, because both physical and mental well-being goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. You talk about, prioritizing um, healthcare, personal hygiene, etc. What pops out for me is, and I know there's a wide range of different mental health issues. There's schizophrenia, depression, which probably one in every second person suffers from depression. And yet, if people are quite comfortable to say, I suffer from depression, but they won't say that I suffer from anxiety, or I have a mood disorder, or I have anger issues. And the other very big one is drug abuse. A lot of the problems are being precipitated by drug abuse, are they not?
They are. W- Drug abuse is one of, like, it's a contributing factor. Sometimes it's drug abuse causing all your other mental conditions, or the other way around, where it's caused by something because people turn to things. And we're noticing that a lot of people are going through difficulties, and what they do is they use over-the-counter drugs just to minimize the pain in whatever it is, where they become more addicted to it. So I think you need to know when exactly, if you are going through something, or you are starting to find patterns where you can't live without something, reach out again, speak to someone, get the help you need before it gets worse.
Okay, so when we talk about the conditions that I've mentioned, and there probably are a whole host more mental health conditions. There's something referred to as mental retardation. What would that be?
So we no longer use the word retardation at all. So they
Mm-hmm.
fall intellectual disabilities.
Ah,
And in the intellectual disabilities, you get different forms. So it could be learning disabilities, it could be reading disabilities. Um, so there are different forms, and also it's a spectrum. So you might have mild, you might have a bit
okay.
more severe. And you find that while growing up, in your childhood, people already start picking up these symptoms, where you
Absolutely.
lack in development, developmental stages. It's not cast in stone, where you have, like, they are recommended, um what do you call them, milestones that you have to reach over your developmental stages. So at this age you need to start walking, at this stage you need to start speaking. So you follow that, but sometimes your child may be a bit more, just a bit more unique, where they aren't able to reach that. So what you need to do maybe is observe, and if you feel like you need the help, there are lots of people and educational psychologists that would be ideal to take your children to them and have them assessed properly.
What about, as you speak, I'm thinking about, you talk about intellectual disabilities, and obviously under that probably would fall ADD and ADHD. Is that also classified as a mental health disorder or illness? And if so, does that then suggest that the child that's been diagnosed as ADD or ADHD would be living with that condition for the rest of their life. Um, it
Okay.
kind of does overwhelm you, does it not?
So with ADD and ADHD, they fall in a different spectrum again. So with that, yes, you could live throughout your life with it. But however, as it goes into adulthood, children that show high symptoms of hyperactivity, it usually turns into depression thereafter into adulthood.
Ah,
So
okay.
there are changes, but over time, it is manageable if you get the right treatment again, if you learn how to cope, you learn proper coping strategies. Some kids even they don't have to take a lot of medication to subside those symptoms. So over time you outgrow the symptoms. But what happens sometimes it does come back, and when it does come back in your adulthood, you'll start seeing the changes again. But usually if you had hyperactivity when we were younger, now when you're older, it comes in form of depression.
Okay, finally, the all important question. There is such a wide range of different mental health illnesses. Would you say that for possibly 90% of these, um, that if caught early, or even if you're in your, even if you're in your 40s for that matter, and finally then decide to seek help, is it treatable, and can you lead a almost normal life on the right treatment, psychosocial therapy, and meds, etc.? Would you safely say that with the right support, you can lead a normal life?
Most definitely. So with any mental illness, you it is totally treatable. It's good to have like your psychotherapy and making sure that you maintain your well-being, and there are support groups to help you maintain your well-being on a monthly basis. You just meet up with people that are going through something similar to you or having the same condition as you. There are support groups even for loved ones that care and support people that are going through their mental illness. And you just keep, it's a journey, it's a process, and you need to be patient. And if you are put on medication, remember the medication will only kick in within 2 to 3 weeks. And
Ah,
sometimes it's a
okay.
with medication as well, some things may work for you, some things may not. So constantly monitor yourself. If you are having severe mental illnesses like bipolar mood disorder, depression, schizophrenia, try and keep a mood diary just to track your well-being on a daily basis, that you are taking your medication, that there's even places where you write your achievements for the day. It can be as
Okay.
small as going to have a haircut, or to clean your room, or do small little things, even cook a full meal, because sometimes mental illness can have a huge impact on your life. So it's good to keep a mood diary. If you are going through depression, or if you are just going through difficult times and you're feeling overwhelmed, and if you like journaling, go ahead and journal, because that's going to help you look after yourself. But also, it's about going back into what you've written for the week. So you have a self reflection. At the end of the week, you go back, you reflect, and then while you're reading through your thoughts, you get ideas of, oh, I should have handled this in this way instead of that way, which will help you better as well.
Okay, what about people who don't like journaling? What's the channel of introspection for them, and ways for them to cope and try and help themselves? That's my one question. And my final question to you then would also be, all right, respond to that and I'll come to my final question.
Okay. um, if you don't like journaling, a lot of people say I prefer just recording my voice over my phone and I listen to my voice notes. That could work. Um, Also having like rest time, peaceful time, just sitting down and having your own thoughts processing, and speaking about it to someone is good. If you don't like that, there are other coping strategies like going for a walk, doing your gardening, whatever you enjoy doing. Always put time aside for something that you like doing. whether it's on a daily basis, whether it's a weekly thing, but always make sure you do something to make you feel happy. So it also helps, you relax in a certain way, because we are living in a very stressful time at the moment.
Okay, we do, well, from what I've heard over time and from what I've read over time, one of the more difficult mental health illnesses to diagnose and treat is schizophrenia. I could be wrong, but that's what I've picked up over time. What about narcissism? Um, that does fall under the mental health umbrella. And what sort of therapy is available for people to start being more empathetic and humane and not be so arrogant?
Okay, so narcissism falls under your personality disorders. So
Okay.
again, it's about how you perceive yourself. And usually it's very difficult for a person that's narcissistic to go out and reach out for help. Loved ones may show concern. And that's when they start, okay, fine, let me just try and go and speak to someone. It's a very difficult, it's mostly like interpersonal therapy that helps you with that. Also, it's about self reflection again. How have I behaved today? Did I harm someone through what I've done today? Think, like, asking yourself relevant questions, but it's about learning about self again. And it's really difficult to work with a narcissistic person because they usually do not go out and get the help. But if someone has a loved one that's going through it, maybe you go ahead and speak to someone, a therapist or a counselor, to learn how to deal with it. Because I always say it's 10% of the person's actions, but 90% of how we react to it. So your
Oh,
reaction be
wow. Wow. That's one. That's awesome. I've just learned something new.
your
Fatima,
is
continue.
important. I think your reaction to anything is important. So always remember your reactions count more than what the person's doing at the moment.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you indeed for talking to us.
Like,
Let's hope and pray that we have a wonderful World Mental Health Awareness Day. People start applying their minds to this illness or disease and start being more empathetic to people who suffer from any form of mental health illness. Thank you indeed. Go well and
thank
keep
you
up the
much.
great work at SADAG.
Thank you much. Okay, salam.
Walaikum salam. 14 after 10, news and views right here on Salam Media. Stand by for our final interview of the morning. And that, of course, is with Dr. Iqbal Survey. He is with the Sekunjalo Group. Coming up in a minute or